Welcome to our explainer. Today we're diving into one of history's most critical moments, the final, shattering battle that sealed the fate of a 400-year-old empire. This is the story of Persia's last stand. It's a powerful idea, isn't it? That feeling that something is forever, that it's just permanent, and then all of a sudden it's not. Well, for the mighty Sasanian Empire of Persia, that rug-pulling moment came in 642 CE at a place called Nahavand. And this wasn't just another battle. It was the violent, definitive end of an entire era. So, here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll start by looking at an empire that was already on its knees. Then, we'll get into Persia's last great strategic gamble. See how a brilliant countermove completely flipped the script, witness the devastating aftermath, and finally, really understand why this one battle changed the world.
Okay, so let's set the stage here. You have to understand, long before a single sword was even drawn at Nahavand, the Sasanian Empire was already in huge trouble.
And this wasn't some sudden thing. It wasn't the first major blow they'd taken, not by a long shot. They'd already suffered these catastrophic defeats, like at the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah, which cost them their heartland, Mesopotamia. I mean, their capital city had fallen. What was left of the Persian leadership had to pull back, retreat east into the mountains of the Iranian plateau. The king, a young guy named Yazdegerd III, was less of a ruler and more like a fugitive in his own land, just trying to rally support from nobles who weren't so sure they wanted to help anymore. And this is where it gets really interesting, when you put these two sides side by side. On paper, yeah, Persia still looked pretty strong. They could pull together a massive army, and they had these great fortified positions. But then you look at the other side, the Rashidun Caliphate's army? These guys were battle-hardened veterans. They had this incredible unity, a command structure that actually promoted guys who were good at their jobs, not just because of their family name. And they had something you just can't measure: momentum. Pure, relentless momentum. So the Persians had the numbers, sure, but the Arabs had the initiative. And as we're about to see, history almost always sides with initiative. So, facing this grim reality, the Persian commanders decided it was time to make one last all-or-nothing stand. This was it, their final roll of the dice at Nahavand. And you know, their plan, it actually made a lot of sense. Nahavand is tucked away in the mountains of western Iran, perfect terrain for a defender. The Sasanian commanders, they weren't looking for some glorious battle in an open field. No, they wanted to use their strengths, their numbers, and their forts. The whole idea was to lure the Arab army in, force them into this long, miserable, and costly siege, and just grind them down. The hope was that a big defensive win would restore everyone's confidence.
But here's the thing about great plans. They only work if your enemy plays along. And the Arab commanders? They were not about to just walk into such an obvious trap. Instead of charging head-on, they decided to turn the entire Persian strategy completely on its head.
What they did next was just a stroke of genius. A simple three-step play. First, they faked a retreat. They made it look like the long wait and the tough Persian defenses had finally broken them. That was the bait, and the Persian commanders, who were so eager for a victory, they took it. They ordered their massive army out of the safety of their forts to chase down what they thought was a beaten enemy. And that's when step 3 happened. The Arabs suddenly wheeled around and launched a furious counterattack right there in the open field.
And that, right there, that's the moment the whole battle flips on its head. Everything the Persian strategy was built on, the tough terrain, the strong walls, the idea of a long siege, it all just evaporated the second their army marched onto that open plain. They were lured into the exact kind of fight their commanders had tried so desperately to avoid. The trap had been turned on the trappers.
What happened next? Well, it wasn't just a defeat. It was a complete and utter catastrophe, an unraveling from which the Sasanian Empire would never, ever recover. You can just imagine the fighting was absolutely brutal. The Persian soldiers, they fought with this desperation of men defending their whole world. But their formations, totally exposed out in the open, just started to buckle and break under the Arab assault. Communication failed, and once the lines broke, what should have been a retreat turned into a total slaughter. See, this is the key thing to get. Nahavand wasn't just a loss on the battlefield. It was a structural collapse of the entire Sasanian war machine. After this day, there just wasn't a Persian army left that could put up a real fight.
And this timeline just shows you how fast, how incredibly fast, the end came after that. After the battle, the king fled, basically a monarch without an army.
Resistance didn't totally stop, but it became scattered, local, and ultimately hopeless. Cities began to surrender. Local lords cut deals to save themselves. The entire imperial system, the one that had defined this part of the world for over 4 centuries, it just dissolved. So, why are we talking about this one battle almost 1,400 years later? What makes it so important? Well, because Nahavand wasn't just the end of an army. It was a genuine turning point, a real hinge in world history.
Think about it like this. Before Nahavand, you could still kind of imagine a Persian comeback story. But after, that hope was gone, completely. The battle threw the gates of Iran wide open, which kicked off this massive transformation of the entire Middle East, politically, culturally, and religiously. It was, simply put, the final word in the long, incredible story of ancient Persian imperial power.
And this quote really gets to the heart of it all. If you take away just one thing from this whole story, let it be this. The Sasanian soldiers who fought at Nahavand, they were incredibly brave. They fought for their homes, their families, their empire. But courage alone wasn't enough to save a system that was already broken, exhausted, and failing from the inside.
Which leaves us with a question that honestly is as relevant today as it was back then. In the end, what truly holds an empire together? Is it the bravery of its soldiers on the battlefield? Or is it the strength and health of the system that puts them there in the first place? It's a tough lesson that history teaches again and again. Thanks for watching.